Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sandy Wolf, and I lead Strategic Relations and Partnership for our membership department at your San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon in our webinar in collaboration with the U.S. Small Business Administration about the Restaurant Revitalization Grant to be administered by SBA's Office of Disaster Assistance. This webinar is part of our new small business series titled Navigating the Small Business Landscape, and we're really happy that you're joining us today. I want to thank Mr. David Elizondo, Deputy Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration at the San Antonio District Office, for taking time out of his busy schedule to be with us virtually this afternoon. Many of our members have been adversely impacted by the pandemic and are definitely eager to learn a little bit more about this new grant program. Let me go over a few housekeeping before I introduce Mr. Elizondo. Of course, we're utilizing the Zoom webinar platform for today's discussion. If you'd like to submit a question, you can do so by using the Q&A feature on your screen. We will do our best to incorporate questions from the audience as time permits. We usually have time at the end of it to ask. Mr. David Elizondo is the Deputy District Director, like I said, for the U.S. Small Business Administration at the San Antonio District Office. Some of you may know that the SBA was created in 1953 as an independent agency of the federal government to aid, counsel, assist, and protect the interests of small businesses. In his role, Mr. Elizondo works with SBA lenders, resource partners, and small business in the 55-county region of Central and South Texas that encompasses San Antonio. Mr. Elizondo originally joined the SBA as the branch manager for the SBA Corpus Christi branch office, where he oversaw SBA operations there. Prior to joining the SBA, Mr. Elizondo was a program director for the Veterans Business Outreach Center at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. He served in the United States Air Force for more than 4 years with multiple overseas assignments and successfully completed 2 tours in the Middle East. Thank you for your service, Mr. Elizondo. He did earn his bachelor's in administration with a major in computer information systems and a master's degree in business administration from the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Please help me welcome Mr. David Elizondo and his friend, Ms. Mary Hernandez.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Dr. Wolf, for the introduction. The San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce should feel honored because it is my pleasure that I introduce the new district director for the San Antonio District Office, Mary Hernandez. She officially started this week, so it's been a great opportunity for San Antonio to have such a great leader in place. And again, wanted to quickly introduce Mary Hernandez before we start this presentation. Mary?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the warm introduction, David, and thank you, Dr. Wolf, Ellen, Martin, for facilitating today's webinar on the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, or RFF. The RFF will provide $28.6 billion in direct relief funds to restaurants and other hard-hit food establishments that have experienced economic distress and significant operational losses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. SBA recognizes the great urgency to help you keep your doors open. So in preparation for the upcoming launch, Deputy District Director Elizondo will provide an overview of the RRF program, including which entities are eligible, the eligible uses of the funds, how to calculate your potential fund amount, how and what you'll need to apply, as well as an overview of the priority groups, which will be able to apply during the first 21 days that the program is open. So I'll turn it over to David to walk you through the presentation and help familiarize you with the various aspects of the RRF program in advance to ensure that you have as smooth and efficient application experience as possible. David?
Thank you very much, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. You don't understand, there's been one too many instances of Murphy's Law when we're doing these webinars, so you'll hear me often. I say, can you hear me, before I start talking. So that being said, Ellen, I'm gonna still the screen here. Let me know, give me a thumbs up if you can see the SBA logo. Great.
Yes,
okay.
I can see it.
We will get started now with the Restaurant Revitalization Fund initiative. So it's a tongue twister. So if you hear me starting to abbreviate the RRF, that's probably why. So again, good afternoon, everyone. The last time we collaborated together, we were talking about the Shutter Venues Operators Grants. And this program is another program to help small businesses recover as a result of COVID-19, but there is a specific target group that this grant is for, which we'll go more in depth with. The way to apply for this grant is going to be a little different than the way you apply for the EIDL, the way you apply for SVOG, for Triple P. My goal for today is to get you all aware of what the program entails, how do I apply, what I can do to prepare for next week's launch. So therefore, if there's any ambiguity, if you have any questions, this is what we're here for today, is to help you all out. Okay, so work with me here. Okay, so what is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund? So it's part of the American Rescue Plan Act that became law as of March 11th under President Biden. Under ARPA, as Mary mentioned, 28.6 billion has been allocated, authorizing us as the U.S. Small Business Administration to authorize the funds or to award the funds. The appropriations remain available until expended. So we obviously want San Antonio to get on board as quickly as possible to take advantage of this opportunity. And what I'll mention later on during the presentation is if you apply for other programs, how this impacts your ability to apply for this program as well. Funds must be used for eligible uses no later than March 11th of 2023. So 2 years to the date that it became law. So let's start off right off the bat. Who is eligible to apply for RRF? And you know, as a little caveat, eligible entities are businesses that are not permanently closed. So if business temporarily closed but opened back up, this is applicable to you all. So if a small business permanently closed, unfortunately, you're not eligible to apply for RRF, where it includes where the public and patrons assemble for the primary purpose of being served food and drinks, which include restaurants, food stands, food trucks. I know here in San Antonio, food trucks are becoming very popular. Caterers, bars, saloons, lounges, taverns, snacks, and non-alcoholic beverages like coffee shops, ice cream shops. So all these that I've mentioned so far, the 5 bullets on top, we're automatically assuming that 33% or more of the revenue is for beverages and food. For the remaining bullets there, such as bakeries, brew pubs, breweries, microbreweries, wineries, distilleries, inns. Again, we're under the impression that at least 33% of your gross receipts will be used for food and beverages. Licensed facilities or premises of a beverage alcohol producer where the public may taste, sample, and purchase products. That's also becoming very popular here in Central Texas. And other similar places of business in which the public or patrons assemble for the primary purpose of being served food and drinks. All right. So if you notice right off the bat with the Shutter Venues Operators Grant, that was for a particular industry. Same with the Restaurant Revitalization, that it is for targeted industries as well. And if you want to know if you fall within these categories, if you ever applied for your LLC, LLP, you should have applied for your North American Industry Classification System code, also known as your NAICS code. It's a 6-digit code that lets you know which industry you fall under. If you're a sole proprietor, same thing, you can go to SBA's website to determine what your NAICS code is. Okay, who is ineligible to apply for the RRF initiative? So state and local government-owned businesses cannot. As of March 13th, 2020, owns or operates together with any affiliated businesses more than 20 locations, regardless of whether those locations do business under the same or different names or in different industries. So again, we're really trying to target the core of small businesses. Has a pending application for or has received the Shutter Venues Operators Grants. Is a publicly traded company, permanently closed, you're a nonprofit, and it's not eligible for funding of at least $1,000. So after you put in your applications and do your calculation, your gross receipts reflect $800, then unfortunately you would not meet the criteria. Something else I want to talk about here. The Shutter Venues Operators Grants first went live April 8th, but due to some issues on the back end, we had to delay the launch, and it was relaunched this week. So especially if you applied for SVOG this week, you really want to bear this information because it may impact as a result the amounts that you can be awarded for. Okay, how much am I eligible for? So SBA may provide funding up to $5 million. So it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get $5 million. It says up to per location, not to exceed 10 million total for the applicants and affiliated businesses. So want to pay attention here. So if you have multiple affiliated businesses under one C Corp or LLC umbrella, just know that overall the funds are not going to exceed $10 million. And as I mentioned on the last slide, the minimum award that one person can get is $1,000. The process is somewhat similar like SVOG. You will, of course, want to upkeep your records. In case there is an audit done, we encourage folks to talk with a CPA. We're not saying you have to, but it's a good practice, especially if you're a small business owner. You want to make sure that you're applying for the right amount, making sure you get the most optimal amounts of the funds available. So what's different with the RRF versus, let's just say, SVOG? When I did this presentation with the Hispanic Chamber a few weeks back, it was specifically over the SVOG. And you may recall that we talked about getting your DUNS number or cage identifier. You have to go to sam.gov, the Systems for Award Management, to get your DUNS number. Well, it's different in this case here. So for the restaurant revitalization, because it's from a different set of funds under the ARPA, you do not have to apply for your DUNS number here. As a matter of fact, even valid ITINs are acceptable. But you also want to make sure you have your ITIN number. You go to the IRS website. If you need your EIN number, of course, you're talking to the IRS website as well to get that information. So who is eligible? There's a variety of for-profit entities that can apply for the RRF, such as C Corps, S Corps, partnerships, LLCs. I mentioned sole proprietors already, self-employed individuals, independent contractors, tribal businesses, and also LLC taxed as S Corps or sole proprietors. There is a little caveat at the bottom that B Corps are also eligible, but they will select either C Corp or S Corp on the application, depending on how they are taxed. So in addition to SBA taking the application, so this is not like the Paycheck Protection Program, where you are approaching PPP participated lenders. You are applying directly through SBA's portal. Additionally, we have point of sale vendors that are going to assist SBA. So this is unprecedented. We're actually getting outside firms to help process RRF applications, and we'll go more in depth later in this PowerPoint of who those point of sale vendors are. Okay, continuing with who's eligible. So if I have any franchises on this call today, there's two ways to look at this. First, if your franchise is already part of the SBA franchise directory, chances are you're good. You can apply. But if you're not part of the SBA franchise directory, you want to submit your FDD, your franchise disclosure documents, and all other documents as a franchisee required to franchise at SBA.gov for review of SBA's other eligibility criteria. Now, that being said, there's a dedicated hotline specifically for RRF initiatives. Just like the EIDL, just like the SVOG, there's a specific 1-800 number to call. For the PPP related inquiries, you're talking to the banks. For the RRF, I can tell you right now, part of the San Antonio District Office team is getting ready to administer the RRF initiative, which starts next week. And we'll share that contact information with you shortly. Continuing with who's eligible. So even if you're bankrupt, if you declared bankruptcy, you still can apply for the RRF under certain conditions. So applicants that are operating under an approved plan of reorganization under either a Chapter 11, 12, or 13 bankruptcy and meet all program requirements are eligible for funding. However, an applicant is not eligible if it has a permanently closed, again, as I mentioned, filed a Chapter 7 liquidation bankruptcy, or filed for either a Chapter 7 or 11, 12, 13 bankruptcy, but is not under an approved plan of reorganization. Additionally, permanently closed does not include businesses who temporarily closed their doors due to state or local restrictions or other pandemic causes, but are still in operation or have reopened. So of course, when the pandemic first started here in San Antonio, For the most part, everyone that had indoor seating had to close up shop. And the key word that I've been using with stakeholders, small business owners and constituents, has been pivoting their small business during this pandemic. And so you saw under Governor Abbott saying, certain small businesses can start selling alcoholic beverages when before they couldn't. And slowly, with the governor of Texas and the mayor and the judge of Bexar County, the mayor of San Antonio, we slowly started to reopen our doors from 25% capacity to 55 to 75 to 100%. So we're slowly getting back on track. But in that process, if a business temporarily closed, but they're open again, they can still apply for this RRF initiative. So a question we get quite frequently at the district level is regarding the Paycheck Protection Program, loan, and RRF. And SBA has done a very great job about providing a cross-program eligibility matrix. And if you go to SBA's website, you can go to simply sba.gov/disaster. There is a section that talks about COVID. And in each section, so under SVOG, under EIDL, under PPP, there's always a link that shows a cross matrix, eligibility matrix. And so if you apply for PPP, how does that impact my RRF application? Or if I apply for EIDL, how does that impact my SVOG application? So I would highly recommend, if you have applied for more than one SBA disaster assistance program, take a look at the matrix to see how you can apply and what are the implications if you did apply for a program. Okay, so for example, here for the Paycheck Protection Program loan, any funds already received under the PPP will be subtracted from the applicant's final funding amount. Applicant is verified using their EIN, their ITIN, or social security number associated with the PPP loans. If the applicant received a PPP loan, the applicant must use the same EIN number for its RRF application as it's used in the application for the PPP. If an applicant applied for first draw PPP loan for multiple locations under one EIN and subsequently applied for second draw PPP loans under different EINs, the application or the applicant must provide the EINs for each entities that receive second draw PPP loans. And on that note right there, PPP is still open for another month. It was supposed to expire as of March 31st. I believe I worked with you all sometime during the month of April for the SVOG presentation, but the Paycheck Protection Program portal is still open, or the application status, you can still apply as of the end of May 31st. So that's one of the questions we do get: which one should I apply for? Well, ultimately it's your discretion, but do know there are implications for applying for one or the other, because these programs are essentially talking to each other at the end. That's what's most important. Now with the SVOG applications going live, we highly encourage folks to hold off on applying for the RRF until you find out the results of the Shutter Venues Operators Grant, because again, these programs are talking to each other. So at some point, your EIN, your SSN, your ITIN is being verified. SBA is really big right now with as far as fraud, waste, and abuse. If there's been people taking advantage of these programs, completely off topic here, but I believe it was in Houston, where there was a pastor that received the PPP loans and spent over $1 million on buying vehicles. Well, the SBA found out about that, and I can assure you he's in hot waters right now. In addition to the application itself, we always say other attestations that you can include in your application as you apply for the RRF. So all applicants must certify that current economic uncertainty makes the funding request necessary to support ongoing or anticipated operations. One thing about the RRF portal, similar to the SVOG, if you're using another platform to host all your documents, you cannot click the links and add those links onto your application status. You actually have to input all the information directly onto these applications. I just want to keep that in mind, or for you all to keep that in mind, because the last thing I want is you're putting all these links that has your documentations on another site. And when someone's reviewing your applications, chances are they're not going to click those links, because we as in federal employees, we're very cautious with clicking external links, especially because we don't know if it's going to be spam or a phishing attempt or so forth. Okay. What are eligible uses of the funds? We did a webinar earlier this morning. One of my lender relations specialists did the exact same presentation. So we have one message across the board. We're not altering these presentations by no means for one entity versus another. And one question that came about from the presentation earlier was, can I use this for rent? And the answer is yes, you can. Under SBA's website, under RRF, the splash page, there is a list on top of the list that you see here of eligible uses for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. So I'll just read off on a few here, such as payroll costs, utility payments, maintenance expenses, supplies, food and beverage, covered supplier costs, operating expenses such as insurance, marketing. So Dr. Wolf, if you want to market, if you have a small business and you want to market your small business, you can apply for the RF if you have a restaurant or something to this effect. This one's very key. This one I really am glad that the agency elaborated on, which is construction expenses. So when COVID happened, of course, we had to maintain social distancing of 2 meters or 6 feet. So a lot of small restaurants had to expand seating outside. Here in the lovely state of San Antonio, or the lovely state of Texas, and here in San Antonio, I'm sure some fans had to be incorporated too.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, to get additional seats, to have more customers coming to the restaurants, folks had to expand their patios.
Build a patio.
So therefore, yeah, absolutely. Construction of outdoor seating, but here it says expansion costs are ineligible. So if you're trying to obtain this grant for the purpose of expanding, such as I want to move from one location to another, that's kind of a gray area. But if you have an existing area and you have some room outside that you want to expand seating, outdoor seating, this would be a prime example of where RRF would be utilized. Also, if you have current business debt, so if you have any payments on mortgage obligations for principal and interest, the main thing is you're not doing any prepayments. So this is to making sure that you're staying up to date, but I'm going to try to pay this off as quickly as possible. That's probably not a no-go for, or it is a no-go for the RRF. So when do I have to use the funds for? So another question came about earlier during this morning's presentation. And what we try to do, and maybe we're doing it today as well. So as one person is presenting, I'm trying to tackle the questions on the side chat. So I know Dr. Wolf, you mentioned you were going to help out with that. So I'm counting on you on this. One of the questions that was posed is, I received the RRF, but 8 months from now, I have to close up shop. Unfortunately, business didn't go according to plan, and I'm closing up shop. But I still have the funds of the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. What do I do with that? Can I keep it? If you read the third bullet, no. Uncle Sam's gonna say, where's the remaining money? So we saw that you exhausted 8 months worth according to your monthly expenses, but we do need the additional funds back. Additionally, the funds can go back. That's been another interesting question that I've received. So if you see here, the funds must be spent on expenses that were, past tense, are incurred between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th of 2023. If the business permanently closes after receiving the funds, the covered period will end when the business permanently closes on March 11th or whenever you close up shop. So whatever happens sooner. And as I mentioned, as the question that was posed earlier of, if I have funds still pending in my bank account of Restaurant Revitalization, what do I do with that? Return the money. Last thing I want is someone hold on to the money and you're getting in trouble as a result. So mark this day, April 29th, David said we have to return the funds. Okay, continuing with when I have to use the funds. A use of funds assessment. After the total awarded funds have been exhausted, entities must provide a detailed expenditure report and certification for the required period. So this is similar to the SVOG, where you have to keep documentation of what the funds were used for. Until the applicant completes the use of funds assessment, beginning December 2021 this year, applicants are required to provide self-reported unaudited data detailing the use of distributed funds each year through 2023. And what's going to happen as the funds start to get dispersed starting next week, or start to get processed next week. So SBA is going to come out with additional guidance that outlines the detailed reporting requirements and procedures. We understand that not one shoe fits all, right? And so we're trying to provide examples of how do I calculate to make sure I get the most potential funds under this RRF initiative. So there's the first calculation, and this one's probably the most straightforward one, which is you start a business before January 1st of 2019. So if I, David Elizondo, started business ABC, LLC on January 1st of 2018, this is the calculation I would use, which is my 2019 gross receipts minus my 2020 gross receipts. And then if you took out any triple P, subtracting that as well. Pretty straightforward, okay? But of course, we know some people that started business in 2019, right before the pandemic happened, right? And there is an alternative for you all as far as how to calculate. So applicants that began operations partially through 2019. So let's just say I started business, I don't know, April of 2019. How am I going to calculate for this Restaurant Revitalization Fund? So what I'm going to do is take the average 2019 monthly gross receipts, multiply that times 12, minus 2020 gross receipts, but again, subtracting any triple P funds that I have taken out or that was approved for. So applicants that began operations partially in 2019 may choose to use calculations 2 or 3, which I'll go over in the next page. However, calculation 3 could require longer processing times. Later in this presentation, there's multiple ways that you can apply for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, and I'll tell you how to prepare for that. So today's Thursday. They're going to do a piloted launch on Monday. What I want after today is for you all to be ready by the documents I'm going to further discuss. So calculation number 3, this is going to be the most extensive one, but again, acknowledging that some folks may have not started it until 2020, that did not start in 2019, perhaps even sooner than that. So let's see if you fall under calculation number 3. So applicants that began operations on or between January 1st, 2020 and March 10th of 2021, and applicants not yet open but have incurred eligible expenses as of March 11, 2021. Total amount spent on eligible expenses between February 15, 2020 and March 11, 2021, minus 2020 and 2021 gross receipts. But you notice the common theme here is if you receive triple P funds, you have to subtract that as well. And that little caveat at the bottom, applicants that began operations partially in 2019 may choose to use calculations 2 or 3. So if I was in your shoes, I would run both calculations, see which one that's going to get you the greater amounts, right? So perhaps calculation number 2 may yield a higher amount, or vice versa, maybe calculation 3. So you have a little bit of flexibility there. So what can I exclude from 2020 gross receipts? So as you're making your calculations, we do want to make sure that you're excluding certain things, such as your triple P loans. So if you got first draw and second draw received in 2020 and in 2021, if you received SBA Section 1112 payments, if you have no idea what 1112 payments are, this probably does not pertain to you, so don't worry about it. If you receive the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, also known as EIDL, if you receive the advance, the targeted EIDL events, or any other grants under the CARES Act. If you receive, for example, any grants from the city of San Antonio, you can exclude that. And also the Randolph-Shepard Act financial relief and restoration payments appropriation. So again, if you're not familiar with that, it may not be applicable to you. Okay, so how do I apply? SVOG had their own platform. Again, Triple P had their own platform. The EIDL has their own platform, and now the SBA is preparing the platform for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, which is restaurants.sba.gov. You don't need to have a profile in place. I'm going to reiterate that, such as the SVOG needed a profile for this RRF initiative. You do not. I mentioned earlier that SBA has 4 point-of-sale vendors. Maybe Mary, if you can help me out with the chat, what those 4 point-of-sale vendors are. If not, I'll get to it at the very end of the presentation. So in other words, it's not just SBA's platform, it's also 4 additional resources that you can apply for this RRF initiative. And the last option is through phone number. They're open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time. But if you have any real technical questions, like whether you're not sure if this RRF is applicable to you, call this number. From what I'm hearing so far this week, that they've been pretty responsive for any questions that you may have. So based on the information I've shared so far, if it's still unclear whether or not this is applicable to you, such as what's an example that I had recently? A lady that owns a wedding hall, but she caters the food, but resells the food. It was a real technical question. And I'm one of those type of people, I don't want to give you a definitive yes or no without giving you a solution. And in this case, she did call the number to get a further response. What I'm curious to know is whether or not she did get approved. So maybe I should follow up with her. But you can also call this number, this 1-844 number, to also submit your application, but do know it probably will have longer processing times. Okay, so to prepare for you all for Monday's launch and realizing what documents you're going to need. The most important one is going to be the SBA form 3172. If you've never seen this form, if you go to SBA's website today, as we speak, there is a hyperlink on there that allows you to start filling out the application, kind of just letting you see how it looks like to become familiar with it. So whenever the platform goes live on Monday, okay, now I know what to expect. So again, under SBA's page, under the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, there is a document in there that's labeled 3172 that you can take a look at so you can start becoming familiar with that. Anytime you're requesting some sort of disaster assistance from the federal government, they're going to want to see your tax transcripts, which is your IRS form 4506T. This goes way back, folks, from Katrina, even Hurricane Harvey, when I was in Corpus Christi, when people were applying for disaster assistance. Every time you applied, they were requesting your 4506T to see your tax transcripts. Additionally, gross receipts documentation. So here it provides a list of examples of eligible expenses, tax returns, your 1040 Schedule Cs, if you have a partnership, your 1065, additional documentation such as your bank statements you can attach, but making sure that you're inputting this as attachments, not versus links. That's what's key here. And point of sale reports, including IRS form 1099Ks. Okay. So what documents do I need in order to apply? So going back to the calculations. So if you fall under calculations 1 or 2, what forms you're expected to provide on the platform starting Monday is your 3172, 4506T tax transcripts, 2019 gross receipts, 3 months of bank statements, 2020 gross receipts, preferred federal tax returns filed if you have it. Some people, we understand, I believe until June 15th that you can file for your taxes in the state of Texas. If you want, Dr. Wolf, does that sound right? A head nod, like yes. Okay, perfect. Point of sale reports, and then also what's accepted is externally or internally prepared financial statements, such as income statements, profit and loss statements, signed, dated, and certified to the accuracy by applicants. If you fall under calculation number 3, so this is the other one where you started your business later in 2020. What's going to be needed is some of the same documents for calculations 1 and 2, such as your 3172, 4506T, 3 months of bank statements, 2020 and 2021 gross receipts. Comfort, this is new over here under eligible expense documentations under preferred. If you get a comfort letter, so that's you work with your CPA, them acknowledging your profit and loss statements and them signing off on it. That's also accepted as well. And similar to calculations 1 and 2, externally and internally prepared financial statements such as your P&L, the cash flows, those types of documents as well. And then lastly, invoices, payroll documentations. And then lastly, what else is needed for the previous? So in addition to the documents on the prior site, this is for particularly brew pubs, tasting rooms, tap rooms, breweries, wineries, distilleries, and bakeries. Documents evidencing that on-site sales to the public comprise of at least 33% of gross receipts for 2019, which may include tax and or trade bureau forms, state and local forms, internally created reports from inventory management, sales reports, or accounting software. So if you have what's the popular one that people use for accounting software? QuickBooks, sorry. Yeah, so if you have QuickBooks software, you can print out documentation to provide to justify your case here. For businesses that open in 2020, Applicant's original business model should have contemplated at least 33% of gross receipts in on-site sales to the public. So if you are operating an inn, what's going to be needed is documents evidencing that on-site sales of food and beverage to the public comprise of at least 33% of gross receipts in 2019. So moral of this here is the big number is 33% or more of food and beverages were served if you do fall under one of these categories, such as a winery, bakeries, inns, etc. So again, we talked about how do I get help applying. If I was in your shoes, this is what I would do. Again, this is David talking, is become familiar with the documentation that's on SBA's website. Again, looking at the 3172, figuring out how do I apply. The calculations are on SBA's website. If I have a very particular question that it's kind of in the gray area, whether or not I can apply, call this number here, the 1-844-279-8898 number. We have at least 150 people on standby to help you with your questions regarding RRF. You can always reach out to the local SBA district office, getting additional assistance, preparing your financial documentation. We're probably going to leverage our SBA resource partners that we have in the community, such as the Small Business Development Center, the Women's Business Center, SCORE, and the Veterans Business Outreach Center. If you type in your zip code here on this link of sba.gov/local assistance, you type in your zip code, a list of resource partners should pop up that can also assist you regardless if you're just starting your small business, looking into expanding, looking into pivoting, looking into exiting your small business. And SBA just launched multiple languages on their website as well. And what Mary and I are going to brainstorm after this presentation concludes is we also want to present this content to Spanish speakers. So here in the near future, we're also going to be collaborating to get this webinar to Spanish-speaking, predominantly small business owners as well.
Love it.
So perhaps we'll be reaching out to you in the near future again, Dr. Wolf.
Great.
So best practices, provide complete documentation. Obviously, you want to get this right on the first try, because if there's any delays, consider the fact that there's probably going to be over 100,000 people applying for this at the same time. So you want to get it right the first time, right? So applications with incomplete documentation will be rejected. The review process will restart when complete documentation is provided. Delays could jeopardize the applicant receiving the award. Leverage your resources. So I mentioned this earlier in the presentation. We don't necessarily say go talk to a CPA, but it may help with making sure that your documents are properly submitted. So you may want to reach out if you don't have a CPA. I have a CPA. It's becoming very, very technical nowadays. Application corrections, SBA is not able to make corrections on behalf of the applicant. So this is a very extremely valid point. If you think you made an error after today's presentation, David does not have any control of your RRF application. If you call David and say, I made an error, I need for you to revise it. Straight talking here, straight caveat, here at the district office, we're not having any discretion on the applications. We're not making the ultimate decision. So we have staff members that are reporting to these centers that are receiving all the applications, and from there, they're making a determination. But on the local level, we're not approving applications. So I just wanted to clarify that now too. So if you think you made an error after you submit the documentation, please reach out to that number there again, 844-279-8898. I guarantee you by the end of April, that number is going to be embedded in my head on top of that customer service line for IDLE SGOG. That's already in the back of my mind. I can sleep and see that number here all day long. The last one here, I think this one's very important. Applicants who still intend to apply for Triple P. If you're contemplating on which one to apply for, again, it's all being withdrawn from the same amount of funds, right? So at the end of the day, if you're eligible to receive 100,000, you get 30,000 from Triple P. That means you're only going to get 70,000 from this RRF initiative. Okay. So under the Triple P, if 60% or more is used for payroll purposes, of course, you know that it's forgiven. Instead of 8 weeks to exhaust it, you do have 24 weeks. And so there's a little bit of flexibility there too. So what we are advising is to complete your Triple P application in advance if you do plan on applying for the RRF. But starting May 1st, if you wait until, let's just say, I don't know, June 2nd to apply for RRF and funds are still available, then of course you don't have that opportunity anymore to apply for Triple P, because as of the end of May, that's when the deadline closes to apply. So starting next week, I think it's starting a little bit now, but more so next week, as well as the pilot period. Participants will be randomly selected from existing PPP borrowers who self-identified as members of RRF priority groups. We'll go in more depth what those priority groups entail. Pilot participants will not receive funds until RRF is open to the public at application launch. During the initial 21-day period, priority period, SBA will accept applications from all eligible applicants. Only applications from small businesses owned by women, veteran, and socially and economically disadvantaged applicants will be funded during this period. And then on day 22, that's when the floodgates open, and anyone that can qualify for RF will be able to apply. So our goal is to get the socially disadvantaged or minority groups to apply for RF starting Monday. So that encompasses, you know, if you're a woman-owned small business, if you're a veteran-owned, you're socially economically disadvantaged, and you're at least majority owner. So here it has to be 51%, right? What's unique about this RRF is when you apply for certification programs to do government contracting work on federal level, there's a lot of checks and balances in place to make sure that you are indeed a woman-owned, veteran-owned. You have to supply documentation. For this RRF, you're self-certifying that you are. So if they do an audit later on, find out that you're not, and there might be some repercussions behind that.
Right.
So it's one of those things we're trying to get the funds out as quickly as possible. I guess that's what's key here is we're at the end of April. We are trying to avoid coming into July and the funds are still not being dispersed because people are still certifying that they're women-owned, veteran-owned, et cetera. So that's why the self-certification process is in place as of right now. So, you know, as a prime example, we try to provide some scenarios. So an applicant has 5 owners who each own 20% of the application, right, of the applicant. 2 owners are veterans and 1 is a socially and economically disadvantaged individual. So that puts you at 60%. So therefore you are considered a priority group individual. And some of y'all may be scratching your head right now of what is socially disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged. Well, here it is. Socially disadvantaged individuals are those who have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias because of their identity as a member of a group without regard to their individual qualities. Individuals who are members of the following groups are presumed to be socially disadvantaged: Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, including Alaska Natives and Native Hawaiians, Asian Pacific Americans, and subcontinent Asian Americans. Economically disadvantaged individuals are those socially disadvantaged individuals whose ability to compete in a free enterprise system has been impaired due to diminished capital and credit opportunities as compared to others in the same business area who are not socially disadvantaged. So being part of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, you know, my hope is the majority of the folks on this call here may qualify under the socially disadvantaged. And that's why I think it was crucial that when Martin reached out to me saying, hey, let's collaborate on this RRF initiative, like, okay, great, let's get to it as soon as possible, because I kind of knew in the back of my mind that the majority of the members of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber do fall under the social disadvantage.
Yes.
Okay. So let's just say there's a reorganization of the firm after award. So here it says, entity reorganization for the purpose of qualification for the priority period will result in automatic disqualification of the award. Best advice here is leave it. If your entity organization already consists of those that don't qualify, don't change it for the purpose to qualify. If you do qualify already, good, but I would hope people that don't fall under the priority group change it for the sake of getting on top of the list, because again, if there's an audit done, then you're going to be liable for the full amount that was awarded to you. And the SBA administrator has acknowledged that, you know, we're trying to make sure that certain groups have an equal chance to apply and set aside for these funds. And so along with the IRS and the Department of Treasury Administrator Guzman said, okay, look, we're going to set aside $5 billion for applicants with gross receipts of no more than 500,000. Again, we're trying to hit the core of small businesses with this initiative. An additional $4 billion is set aside for applicants with 2019 gross receipts between 500,000 and 1.5 million. And an additional 500 million is set aside for applicants with 2019 gross receipts of not more than 50,000. Most importantly, is SBA reserves the right to reallocate these funds at the discretion at the administrator. So let's just say that on that third line, 500 billion or 500 million gets exhausted within the first 2 weeks, because I really expect this 28.6, it's going to go by real quick.
Yeah.
So she does have the authorization to allocate, I don't know, let's just say another $500,000 from line item number 1 to move that towards line item number 3. That is an opportunity she can do. Okay, and that, I believe, concludes my presentation. So let's go with pausing,
Yes.
stop sharing so you can see me again.
Yes.
And some general questions that we are willing to field. So
Right. I have some.
Okay.
Get ready. So yes, Mr. Elizondo, thank you so much. This is so informative. I know it's a lot of information, but the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber partners with you so well, and we are so committed to making sure that our businesses have this information. You had mentioned earlier that, we have a unique kind of demographic, and we do, because 90% of our membership is small businesses. That's the foundation of what San Antonio is built on. So we are here for them to provide this resource. So if you don't mind, let's move to some of the questions we received from the audience. I definitely want to encourage our members, if something else kind of comes up as we're talking, go ahead and put it in the Q&A and we'll see if we can get to it. First of all, the best place to find follow-up information, because you will be getting a recording of this, but the best place is the sba.gov/
You can type disaster and there is a link for RRF.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So this is the RRF, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. So we want to make sure that that's what we're referring to. First question, what areas of Texas does this apply?
Everywhere.
Okay, great. So it's full Texas, if you're a Texas-based business, any city.
So a full Texas, full United States, as long as you're an established small business. So this is not a statewide initiative. This is a nationwide initiative. So you're going to have folks applying from Alaska to Guam to Texas to the U.S. Virgin Islands to Maine and everything in between.
Yeah, and I
so
like
that's
what
why
you
I was
said.
saying that 28.6 billion.
Yeah,
it's
a lot
going to
of money.
go. Yeah.
It's definitely a lot of money. And I like what you said about, like, we had the shuttered revenue, or the shuttered venues grant a couple of weeks ago. And I like what you said of those people that are out there that might be listening that have a venue, but also have catering services, they may be able to qualify for this one too. So I really enjoy that. Okay, next question. If you have several affiliations, and can each business with its own EIN number apply separately?
So that's one of those questions that's become very popular, where if each entity has its own EIN, they can apply or under one as well.
Oh, okay.
But
Is
again,
it
if you apply
better?
under one,
Yeah.
So you have the option of either or, but I think under internally we have a group chat going on about the affiliate questions. And again, it's not to exceed a certain dollar amount, right? So you have to be cautious with that, because obviously you don't want to exceed the 5 million per location and the max amount that you can get of RRF as well.
So that's a good thing to remember, the 5 million per location.
And if possible, I believe I can chat here too, right? Here we go.
Yeah, you can respond.
Okay. So I'm going to include a hyperlink here about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund program guide that people can refer to as well. So instead of having to search it out, this information on SBA's website, so like for us, it's pretty easy because we already know where everything is. But for those folks that are on this call that are listening, of what exactly are the program tells, what are the do's and don'ts? The link that I just put on the chat here is a good starting point as well of whether or not, how do I apply for this RF, especially when it comes to affiliates.
Great. Yeah, we just got it. And I can see that right there. And we'll make sure to repost that for you as well. You know, one of the things that you said earlier made me think of how the application, you have to have everything done. You know, you check everything. If it's incomplete, sorry, you need to start over. Right. I just want to say that if you're doing that, of course, copy everything before you send it in. Make sure you have a really tight file in case you miss something and have to resend it or have to update it. So I'm a big fan of that, because I know that this is a process. I know it's tedious for some people, but it's also money. So we want to keep people working, and we want to keep people in business. Next question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
If I could further elaborate, and these are some key things that we're taking away from the earlier presentation that I want to share with you and your team as well, is what my lead lender relations specialists mentioned. You want to make sure you have the latest internet browser too, not to make sure you have an outdated internet browser, because that may pose an issue when it comes to uploading documents. So you want to make sure that you're using, you know, the latest Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome. What's the other one for Apple here? Safari.
Right.
And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is, I'm not too sure if it was addressed on the chat here, is the point of sale vendors. So in addition to SBA accepting applications for RF, there are 4 vendors, and I'm looking at my cheat screen over here if I'm looking this way. Those point of sale providers include Square, Toast, Clover, and Aloha. So those are additional platforms that you can apply for RRF. So
That's
if
great.
you notice, for example, there's a long wait time on SBA's website. There it is. Thank you very much, Mary. If there's a long wait time, you know, these are some other options that you all have as well to apply for RF. The only thing is, I would not submit an application on both one of these 4 point of sales and SBA's website, because that's a duplication and that will potentially throw you to the back of the crowd.
Yeah, you're going to find it. I like that. At least you guys are talking to each other. So that's helpful to know that, yeah, people can't double dip.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to the questions and let's see. Is this retroactive? I already built a deck for outdoor seating.
And great question, because that was something that was posed early on. And as far as when or what can use the funds for, so I believe it's February 15th, 2020 for any expenses incurred. So yes, as long as
If
it
it's
was
been
after
within
February.
about the past year, is that what you're saying about the past year? Okay.
Right.
That's good. Where can, and we already talked about where you can find the latest information about it. And I know that you've already talked about what to put together before it, how to kind of prepare for that. You've got that guide. Oh, this is the other one I get a lot of who can assist with filling out the application.
SBA resource partners. So the Small Business Development Center, SCORE, Women's Business Center, Veterans Business Outreach Center, can assist. The 1-844 number also. So a part of SBA's team was pulled specifically for this RRF initiative. And so, as I mentioned earlier, that even encompasses part of my team here in San Antonio, where I can't talk to so-and-so who's down the hall from me because she's part of the Restaurant Revitalization Fund initiative. And that's her sole mission, is to help people with that. Yes,
I love the way that you guys have those resources and that you have so much information on the SBA.gov website. You guys are really not only a good partner for us as the Hispanic Chamber, but a really great partner for all of our small businesses. I think that's about all the time we have. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We answered a lot of questions today. Again, SBA.gov. There's the RRF hotline, 1-844-279-8898. I'm going to get that too. So thank you so much for our director putting that in. And Mr. Elizondo, thank you, and everyone else for joining us today. I want to let our audience know that they will receive a copy of this presentation immediately following the webinar. And on behalf of our president and CEO, Marina Gonzalez, along with our chairwoman, Dr. Erica Gonzalez, and our board of trustees at the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber, thank you for joining us today. And we hope to see you at our next event. David, as always, wonderful to hear from you. And thank you so much, Mary. It was great to meet you as well.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you next time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. Thank you, Martin.